People always ask me what the strangest call I ever got from our president was. They expect me to say something about a rival club, or a stretch of highway nobody should have been on, or a job that went sideways in the dark. I never tell those stories. The one I always come back to started on a Tuesday afternoon in July, on a gravel road outside a town so small it didn't rate a stoplight. And it started because I was thirsty. I had been road captain for the Iron Covenant for 11 years by then. 11 years of running point, mapping routes, keeping 40 or 50 men in formation through rain and construction, and the kind of summer heat that turns blacktop into a black mirror. I was good at the mechanical part of the job. What I was less good at, back then, was stopping. Stopping for anything that wasn't fuel or a busted tire. I moved through the world like a freight train. Useful, purposeful, and a long way from gentle. That Tuesday I was scouting a route alone, a 2-lane through the corn and soybean fields of southern Indiana. My water ran out around 2 in the afternoon, and the temperature was sitting at 94. I saw a farmhouse set back from the road with a big oak in the front yard, and an American flag on a pole by the porch, the kind of flag that's been there since before you were born and will be there after. I pulled up the gravel drive and cut the engine. She was already on the porch. Small woman, maybe 68 or 70, in a house dress the color of old cream, sitting in a wooden rocker with a glass of sweet teas, sweating on the rail beside her. She had the look of someone who had been beautiful a long time ago and still carried it the way a river carries the shape of its old banks. You could see where it had been. She watched me come up the porch steps the way a person watches weather, not afraid, just paying attention. I told her I was sorry to bother her, that I had run dry, and asked if she could spare some water. She told me to sit down. I started to say I didn't need to sit, just a glass, and she said, "Sit down, son," in the voice women use when they have raised children and buried husbands and are not asking twice. I sat. She brought out a pitcher of water and a second glass, and she sat back in her rocker, and we talked. She asked where I was headed, and I told her north, just scouting. She asked if I had family. I said the club was my family. She nodded at that like it made complete sense to her, which it did not make to most people I said it to. Her name I will keep to myself, but I will tell you she had been a school teacher for 31 years, and that her husband had passed and that she had a daughter she had not spoken to in 6 years. She told me this without self-pity, the way you state a fact about the weather. She told me there had been hard words and hard choices, and that the fault ran on both sides, the way it usually does when a family breaks. Then she told me it was her birthday. I said, "Happy birthday," and meant it. She was quiet for a moment. She was looking out at the cornfield across the road, and I could see she was choosing whether to say the next thing. She decided to. She told me the doctors had given her somewhere between 2 and 4 months. Pancreatic. She said it quietly, like a piece of information she was still getting used to carrying around. She said she had been thinking all morning about what a person does with a birthday when it might be the last one. I didn't say anything. I have learned later in life that there are moments when the only decent thing is to be still. She got up and went inside. She was gone maybe 2 minutes. When she came back, she was holding a small piece of paper, folded once. She held it out to me, and I took it. I opened it. On it she had written a name, her daughter's name, and a city in Colorado, and below that, in the careful handwriting of a woman who had spent 30 years writing on chalkboards, the words, "Please find her before I'm gone. Tell her I'm not angry. Tell her I just want to see her face." I looked at the paper for a long time. I looked up at her, and she met my eyes, and she was not crying, but the look on her face was the kind that is past crying, the kind that lives on the other side of it. "I don't know why I'm giving that to a stranger on a motorcycle," she said. "But I don't have many other options left, and you have a kind face under all that road dust." I folded the paper and put it in the breast pocket of my vest, right against my chest. I told her I would do what I could. I told her I was sorry about the doctors. I told her the sweet tea was the best I'd had all summer, which was true. I walked back down her porch steps, and I got on my bike, and I sat there for a moment with the engine not yet running and looked back at her in that rocker under the oak tree with the flag moving in the hot breeze. Then I rode. I called our president from the road. He picked up on the second ring, the way he always does when it's me. I told him the situation. I told him about the woman and the birthday and the note. There was a pause, the kind he takes when he is deciding something, and then he said, "How old is she?" I told him. He said, "Get back here." I was at the clubhouse by 4:30. By 5 o'clock, there were 14 men around the long table in the back room, and our president was standing at the head of it with the folded note in his hand. He read it aloud. He read it once, and that was enough. We had men with connections you don't acquire legally, and men with connections you do. We had a brother who had done skip tracing work before he patched his in. We had another who had a nephew at a phone company. By 7 o'clock that evening, we had a neighborhood. By 9, we had a street address. The president looked around the table. He said, "Who's riding?" Every hand in the room went up. Word went out to the wider chapter and to 2 chapters in neighboring states. Calls were made. Men rearranged their work schedules and their family plans and their sleep without being asked twice. By Thursday morning at 6 o'clock, 41 riders were assembled in the clubhouse lot in a gray summer dawn, engines idling, headlights cutting the mist. Some of them had driven in from 2 states over, arriving in the dark of Wednesday night to be ready at first light. 41 men in leather and patches, most of whom had never met the old woman on the porch and never would, lined up to ride 1,100 miles round trip for a folded piece of paper and a birthday wish. They did not need to be convinced. The note had been read once, and that was the whole argument. I have been part of this brotherhood for 22 years. I have seen it do things that would not make to a person on the outside. This was not the largest thing I had ever seen it do. But it was, I think, the most purely itself. We rode in 2 staggered columns. I ran point. 12 hours and 4 fuel stops and 1 rainstorm in Nebraska, and we pulled onto a residential street in a mid-sized Colorado city at 6:15 in the evening. Modest houses, good trees, a neighborhood that minded its own business. We parked along the curb for nearly a full block and cut our engines, and I watched curtains move in windows up and down the street. The president and I walked to the door alone. He knocked. It took a while. She opened the door and I knew her immediately. She had her mother's eyes and her mother's way of standing, that quality of careful attention. She was maybe 35, dark hair, work clothes still on. She looked at the 2 of us and then at the line of bikes, filling her street in her. Face did the thing faces do when the world suddenly stops making the sense it was making a moment ago. The president took off his glasses and held them in one hand and spoke to her quietly and plainly. He told her who we were and where we had come from. He told her about a Tuesday afternoon and a woman on a porch in Indiana and a pitcher of sweet tea. He told her about the note. He did not dramatize it. He just laid it out like the truth, which is the only way truth lands. She put her hand over her mouth. He told her what the doctors had said. He told her what her mother had written. She was crying by then and not trying to hide it. She asked, why? Why would a group of strangers ride all this way for someone they didn't know? The president thought about that for a moment. He said, because she asked, and because nobody should have to spend their last birthday wishing. She left with us that night. She threw clothes in a bag and called her job from the car, and she rode in a pickup truck that one of our members drove alongside the convoy, and we took her home to Indiana in the dark, 41 motorcycles and 1 pickup, the headlights strung out through the flat night like a moving candle line. We arrived at the farmhouse at 2 in the morning. I had called ahead. The porch light was on. The old woman came to the door before her daughter reached the steps. She had a robe on over her house dress, and her hair was down, and she looked smaller than she had in the afternoon light. The way people look at night, but her eyes were the same, past crying, fully alive. Her daughter ran the last 20 feet. I stood at the back of the yard near the road, where the gravel meets the grass. And I watched them hold each other on that porch in the yellow light. I could not hear what they said, and I did not try. That was not mine. I thought about what it costs a person to let a year become 2 years become 6. The way silence hardens, the way water freezes, and I thought about what it takes to crack it open again. Sometimes it takes nothing more than a door knocked at the right moment, a line delivered plainly, a truth set down in front of a person, like a plate of food they forgot they were hungry. 4. I just stood there with my helmet in my hands, and the summer dark around me, and 40 other men, standing at a respectful distance along the fence line, all of them quiet, every engine off. I thought about the folded note in my breast pocket. I still had it. I had not given it to the daughter in the end. The president had told her what it said, which was enough. The paper itself had done its work. I thought I might keep it, not as a souvenir, as a reminder. The president came and stood beside me. We watched for a while without talking. The two women had gone inside, but the porch light stayed on, and through the front window you could see the soft movement of people in a lit room, the way a house looks when it is being used for what houses are for. He said, "Good call, road captain." I told him I was just thirsty. He laughed, low and quiet, and after a minute, he put his hand on my shoulder, the way men of a certain generation do when they mean something they are not going to put into words. We made camp on the road outside town that night, tents and bedrolls in a field one of our members knew. Nobody complained. In the morning, we rode back in smaller groups, 2 and 3 and 4, taking different roads home. No formation needed now. The old woman passed 11 weeks later, on a Sunday morning, with her daughter beside her. Her daughter wrote to us. She wrote to the clubhouse. A handwritten letter on plain paper that our secretary read aloud at the next meeting, and there were men in that room who had lost their fathers and their brothers, and hard miles of themselves, and some of them were not entirely dry-eyed, and nobody thought anything less of them for it. Her daughter still writes every year, around the time of her mother's birthday. She writes to tell us how she is doing, the job, the apartment, whether it has been a hard year or a good one, and to say that she thinks about 41 motorcycles parked on her street in Colorado and a knock at the door at 6 in the evening. The way you think about a thing that changed the direction of your life. I think about a gravel driveway and a woman in a rocker and a piece of paper pressed into a stranger's hand. The brotherhood is made of 1,000 such pieces, folded once, carried close. That is what it is when you get it right.